to give you an idea of what's going to happen tonight, we're just going to have each of the different agencies, we give them 5 minutes to speak and then answer questions that any of you may have. And then when they get done, we've got some professionals from USU that are going to take us through some drought management strategies, specifically concerning beef and your rangelands, and then strategies and decision-making tools that you can use on that range. So with that, I want to introduce my boss, the Commissioner of Agriculture, Kelly Pearson, and give him just a minute, and then I'll get back up and we'll get started.
Thanks, Troy. Thanks for having us tonight. I wish we were coming in better circumstances. Like Troy said, we drove the whole state this week, and I want to thank my staff for bearing with me, and we did a long journey this week, but it's been somber, and we truly know what you're facing. I know the drought is more than a headline to you guys. It's financial disaster. And I hope you don't leave this room without questions answered. If there's programs that can help, please have our staff help you get through and apply for these programs. The governor, I'm very thankful the governor has an ag background, and he calls me and wants updates on a weekly basis. He sends his hope and love and for agriculture, and again, don't leave this room without questions answered from all the state and federal agencies here today. I want to thank them for being a good partner this week. Thanks for what you do. Thanks for being resilient. One thing I've always learned about our ag producers in Utah, they do not quit. They find a way. But please let us bear this burden with you, with our programs. And if there's programs that need tweaked, we want to hear about that. When you guys have some of the best legislators in this area that are still have a love for ag, and we use Senator Sandel all the time, Representative Peterson. So if there's things that we don't have that you feel like your operations can use, let's hear about it. But thank you for being here tonight, and please take notes and learn about the programs that we offer.
Okay, so we're going to start with Farm Service Agency. Barbie Hill's going to go first. Then DLM, Jordan, I assume that's you. And then, is there anybody here from Forest Service tonight? I'll say something, just a little bit something about Forest Service. And then we'll go to South Tyler. So we'll just go to that point. Do I need to turn off the lights so we can see?
Okay, so I'm Barbie from the Farm Service Agency. I work here in the Tremonton office. We have Josie from the Cache County office here in the back. We are the supervisors of the Farm Service Agency. We have some programs that are eligible for drought. It's the livestock forage program is the first one I'll talk about. When we hit a drought on a D2 on the U.S. Drought Monitor for 8 consecutive weeks, we will trigger for an LFP payment. As it intensifies to a D3 anytime during the normal grazing period, we will trigger for a 3-month payment. Our maximum payment is 5 months. Let's see. Like I said, as it gets more intense, the payment factor does go up. It will look into the acres that you have reported as non-irrigated for grazing and your livestock numbers in your inventory, and it will pay on the less of the two. So you do have to do a truck report at the deadline. The second program we'll talk about is the Emergency Assistance for Livestock, Honeybees, and Farm-Raised Fish Program. It's called ELAP for short. This one helps assist farmers on forage losses as a result of fire or natural disasters. It does above normal water transportation, so if you normally don't have to haul water to livestock and you have to start now. We can keep track of those miles and gallons on a calendar, and you'll bring those into us and we'll be able to help cover some of that cost. Again, it is above normal. If you have to purchase additional feed, for your livestock. Keep track of that. We pay miles, so keep track of the miles. If you have to haul livestock to the feed, then we'll also cover that, so those are the two. FSA recently expanded ELAP coverage to 365 days on perennial forage. So if it's not related to drought, the disaster is not related to drought, then it doesn't have to fall within that normal grazing period that FSA has established. The third program is NAP insurance. So NAP insurance is a program that covers grazing, acres, crops, if it doesn't have a RMA policy. We can cover that. You do have to purchase it, and you have to obtain it before the sales closing date. And so if you don't know what day that is, contact your local agent, your local service center to get that date. CRP, we do offer CRP grazing. It is available every other year on a normal basis. CRP is the Conservation Reserve Program, in case you didn't know. During normal years, we can graze every other year, and it's 120 days max. During an emergency, during drought, if we're triggered for LFP, then we can graze during the primary nesting season at 50% stocking rate reduction. Our nesting season in Utah is April 1st to July 15th. Another one, last one is we offer loans. The main one for drought would be our emergency loans. You have to be declared a disaster county, and you have to have had the loss, and you have to not be able to get credit elsewhere in order to apply for a emergency loan. There is a website. It's called farmers.gov. That is your one-stop for all the information on FSA programs. There's a big one that people look at is the county office locator. If you don't know where your county office is or who to contact, you can go to farmers.gov, go there, and it will tell you who the CED, County Executive Director, is for that county office. You can also create an account for login.gov. This account, you can apply for programs online instead of coming into the office, or you can look at your farm data that is in. You can pull up your maps and print those at home, do all sorts of things with login.gov. We also, if you don't readily participate in our office and you don't know about our programs, the one way to know about them is through our Gov Delivery bulletin. That's our newsletter. That's all we can do is a newsletter through email. You can go to farmers.gov, and on the bottom of there's a subscribe button, and put your email in, and that'll subscribe you to our Gov Delivery bulletins. There's also text messages that you can do. In Box Elder County, I like to send the text messages just at about 15 days before the deadline. We're good. So if you would like to receive text messages from your county office, like I said, I don't like sending a lot of text messages out because I don't love getting a lot of text messages that I don't care about. So when you get a text message, I want you to know that it's important. So like I said, we try to do it 15 days before a deadline. To sign up for text messages, you have to just text this 372669 number from your cell phone. And in the body of the message, you're going to put the state abbreviation and then your county office name. So for Box Elder, it would be UT Box Elder. For cash, UT Cash. Pretty simple. I don't know that all county offices utilize the text messages. We like it in Box Elder. It's just one easy way to get a lot of response from that. So there's a couple, how to know about our programs. And again, if you have any questions on anything, contact your local service center. You can find that again on farmers.gov.
Just a couple of points from the agency. We did send out some drought letters back in January and February, as probably when folks got them, at least for the permit holders on BLM. Introduce myself, I'm Jordan Davis. I work in the Salt Lake Field Office. I'm what they call an assistant field manager, and I supervise the range. And more than likely, what you can expect is that your range specialist will work with you on a case-by-case basis, allotment by allotment. We're not going to do any blanket type decisions or letters to close allotments or ask for reduction in grazing. That's what I direct my staff to do. It's probably one of those years where you want to use those corners the best you can. If you're looking to water haul, just reach out to your range specialist. They can work you through that process to get that underway. So just expect them to coordinate with you on any issues. And then just any questions, just reach out to them. Talk to them. The DLM, we have a lot of flexibility when it comes to ground management. We try to utilize that to the best capabilities. And just remember, if you're looking to take any kind of reductions or changes, just to reach out to them and then document that through a grading application. 001. And that way we can at least work with you better. Any questions for me?
What kind of this part of that? So, I mean, what you're saying that there's is this
I'm Jordan Davis. So the systems I would be talking about is if you need to water haul, you need to do that kind of stuff, that you need to get an authorization.
It's a CX, right?
Yeah, it's a pretty short process.
Any other questions, Gordon? Did anybody from Forest Service get here by chance? If not, I've heard their deal 4 times, so I'll do it. Forest Service, basically the same thing. Reach out. You should be having your AOI meetings if you haven't in short order. If you want to make changes to your permit, talk to your range con. And all the forests that have talked so far, they've said they haven't made any across the board cuts. The one exception that I know is the Ephraim office has done some, but I haven't heard of any in this area. They still do have the shoulder season available where you can, in Region 4, you can go on up to 2 weeks early or 2 weeks late. You have to ask for that in written form to your range management specialist or your district ranger to get that. But if you think your feed's going to burn up and you need to get on your allotment earlier, which could be the case this year unless something changes, maybe the rains are coming. I should have brought an umbrella and wore my galoshes tonight to show my faith. I didn't. But get with your Forest Service range con, with your district manager, and have those conversations early. They're letting most people go out with full numbers if they want to. If you want to go out with fewer numbers, if you want to shorten up your season, they'll work with you on that. If you want to take non-use for resource protection, it won't count against your permit year. You can do up to 3 years in your 10-year, but if it's for resource protection during drought, that's waived, and you can have that year for free. So those are some of your options with Forest Service. Any questions? My dad was also a Forest Service range con for 30 years, so I've been around a little bit. Okay, we'll go on to Tyler.
Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate you guys for having me. Tyler Hamilton. I am the Northern Region Range Coordinator for SITLA. Previously SITLA, now we're Trust Land Administration. I feel a little bit like a sale barn cow. We're rebranding a little bit. So anyway, appreciate you having me here. I'll reiterate same thing as the Forest Service as well as the BLM. We do offer non-use or even partial non-use if you're interested in it. Get a hold of me. We can do, like it says, partial use, non-use. That won't go towards your fee schedule. The fee will be waived. If you do need to do any water hauls or anything on the trust land administration that is related to drought, we can do that to amend the permit. We can either let you guys go on earlier, stay later, change the number of cows, do those different things. And we are happy to accommodate any of those types of requests. So if you have any questions, get a hold of me.
Do you feed on Sitla with you guys' permission?
If with permission, yes, we can. A lot of that is certified weed-free weight. In certain cases, we might be able to waive that if you guys have got a gravel pit or a lease on us. We like to feed. I don't care what you feed on there sometimes. Just don't tell me what it's in it. So, but I think that's it for me. Any questions? Appreciate it.
Thanks, man. You know, we're going to go to Natural Resources Conservation Service, and then our Basin Improvement Program, and then our Emergency Loan Program.
All right, I do show a spell for this one. Jeff Chick, I'm the conservation for about Taylor County. I'm glad to be here to try to tell you about what kind of programs we've got. We've got most of our programs are long-term, so they're improvements in programs. So it's not emergency, fix it up, but mostly, improve over long-term. So our environmental quality incentive program we have available has a lot of different categories in it. We can do irrigation efficiency improvements, so livestock water development, soil health practices, and we've got a new program, the regenerative pilot program that we've been putting out. We've got a that does range improvements, irrigation improvements, soil health kind of things. It's a really good program. We've had a lot of interest this year. Had almost $19 million in applications for it here in the county for a spring round. So we've done really good for interest. We're the only county in the state that has a drought resilience program pool, and we had over $1 million in applications for that. I wish we had $1 million to give out for it, but we do have one, and that one is mostly for livestock water. So we have some programs, a few projects that are going to be going in this year for livestock water. All these programs, they're available. We do take applications year round. They're available to come in and sign up. We do usually a batching period, so we'll cut off applications typically around November for next year's money. All of this year, unfortunately, right now, all of this year's money is spent. Sometimes in drought type situations, headquarters will send us some additional money for this time of year for these kind of situations. I remember several years ago we got a drought pool that they sent money for. We already have one set up. We already have demand for it, so we're in a prime place to be able to get money for people that have already signed up. And if they do that, we'll have an additional sign up for that. So I'm just anticipating that might happen. I don't know for sure, but if you're interested in doing improvements, drilling livestock water wells, if you can get a permit, or distribution systems from water yard to to troughs to open up some different livestock grazing areas, that's a possibility. So if you think that you might be interested in some of that, come on into our office. We're in the service center, with the same place with Farview with the Farm Service Agency. So we also have a long-term program, conservation stewardship program. It has a similar kind of improvement practices. We've changed that. If you've heard of it before, it's totally different than anything that you were used to. So it's mostly, I call it EQIP, the Environmental Quality Incentive Program, with an annual bonus. So you get a little bit of money every year to go with it, up to $4,000. And if you get in there, you get a $4,000 kind of a bonus payment plus the practice payments. So when you install practices, there's additional funds there. So trying to think, and those programs, they both have, we take applications year round, and both of them have the same kind of a cutoff deadline. We just started funding projects for this year right now, And so people will be getting, they already know who they are, who got funded for up to now. This county, we got a lot of demand. We had over $30 million in applications, and I have to deal with that. I get about $4.5 million in money. So I wish there was a lot more money to pass out, because there is sure demand for all the work we do. But we do the best we can, and I'm always there trying to get extra money if there's any possibility to get it after the initial allocations come in. So that's about what I had for this. So any questions?
So you had 19 million in applications yet. How much regenerative funding did you have?
I ended up with about $1.5 million so far. I've requested another $1 million. And we did really well at figuring out how to apply for that and get potential funds. A lot of states didn't figure it out at all. So headquarters has a lot of money. 25% of NRCS's budget nationwide had to go to the regenerative pilot program. So, and nationwide, they've got that much money that they have to spend in that program. So if we have $19 million in applications and there's that money available, then they might try to send us a bunch more. So I'm ready for it. If we get it, we'll be putting our hand out to try to get it for all the producers here, trying to help. So, okay.
Any other questions for Jeff?
Come on in and see us. We'll do what we can for you. Thank you.
I'm Clint Hill, Taylor Payne. We work for the Department of Agriculture and Food in the Grazing Improvement Program. Like the name says, Grazing Improvement Program is a program set up to help improve efficiency and management of grazing. We were able to do projects that increase that efficiency or improve the grazing. A lot like NRCS's EQIP, it's more state funds. And I guess the best way we can help with drought is prior to and prepare for drought. A lot of the projects we were able to do is stock water distribution, cross fencing, those type of things, and it'll help prepare us for a drought. We don't have a lot to help with right during a drought. We do have a little bit of the northwest region up here where Taylor and I cover has some board funds that can help with maintenance on BLM. If there's an emergency, something that happens during the summer, there's a pump goes down or things, we do have a little bit of funds that can help that way. So you can get a hold of your range cons with BLM or us. Otherwise, we can take signups for projects, for future projects. We can come out and meet your place and look at projects and take those signups clear till the end of the calendar year. And then at the end of the calendar year, we will batch them and they're ranked and hopefully funded for next year. So we're always looking about a year ahead with our projects. What else can you add, Taylor?
Clint and I are well acquainted with all of the conservation districts and all of the public land agencies. We work with anybody on private or public lands, and so we have our fingers in a lot of the programs and how to make them work, how we can help you apply them. So I live in Randolph and kind of cover a lot of the eastern side of northern Utah. Clint's over here on the west. But we don't have any hard line between us. We can help anywhere, and we have a lot of resources at our disposal to be able to get you to the right person as quick as possible. And we have a lot of contacts to make things happen. So we want to be as helpful as we can, and that's where we're at. So a lot of times on a drought year, you're starting to see and learn which springs dry up when it gets horribly dry. It's our experience. A lot of times we'll figure out where we want to start thinking about drilling new wells when the springs that we have relied on for so long are starting to peter out. And so seeing those observations out on the range is good to tell us so that we can come in and help you. So anyway, we're here to help through the drought, and we'll stay in touch.
Hey, questions? Yes, Bill.
Will the state let you drill a well now?
If you tie it to an existing water right that you already own, you can take part of that water right away. You can do several different things. Ted Deans is here. He can help explain some of those processes, but through the water rights office. No matter what, if you drill a well, you have to have a start card. And so they will legally help you get set before you do anything that can't be with, outside the law. So,
Good question.
Well, there was a, what do they call it, stop on that here a few years ago. That's been released.
so the governor has a moratorium on doing new water rights.
Water
Maybe not
rights.
any new ones, but if you have an existing water right, again, you can change it. It would be called changing your point of use, or your point of diversion, sorry, not your use, but, anyway, that's, again, the water rights office will step you through those, but Clint and I are totally well versed to be able to help you get there and ask the right questions and get you lined up. So, any other questions? Thanks, guys.
I'm Sarah Clancy. For those of you I haven't met, I'm the loan program manager at the Utah Department of Agriculture and Food. And today I have two loan programs that I'd like to highlight for you that could be a good tool in your financial toolbox as you move through the next year or so. The first one is, there's a flyer in the back, first of all, and there's plenty of flyers for everybody. It has our contact information, the website, but both of these loans that we're going to talk about tonight both start in a similar way. Two separate applications. They look a little similar, but they're asking for a little bit different information, and they both start at the local level. So Ben Law is your UDAF resource coordinator. Ben's typing in the kitchen back there. If you don't know him, I would definitely meet Ben tonight, and he would be a great place to start for either of these loans. He'll help you get if there's a project to plan, he'll help you get that together, and then get the application presented to your local conservation district board. There's two approval processes that these loans go through. So the first one would be your local conservation district would take a look at the application and your plan and what you're looking to do. And then once that's approved, then it's passed on to us at the loan department in Taylorsville. And we then will ask for your financial information and your collateral information and collateral is required for the loan. At that point, once we have our recommendations and we've done all the underwriting process with you, then we would make our recommendation to the Utah Conservation Commission, and then they would vote to approve that, whether or not to approve it. So that's kind of a really brief overview of the whole process. The first loan is the Agriculture Resource Development Loan, or ARDL program, and many of you may have heard of it or worked with that program in the past. And that's going to be your conservation-specific related projects. So what that could be, there's a whole host of things that could be. As long as it has a conservation component to it, that could be pivots, that could be some that kind of go along with the ag water optimization program, like converting from flood irrigation to something that optimizes your water a little bit better, like pipe and riser system, something like that. Wells, hay sheds, something that will store your commodities, grain bins. So it can really do anything as long as it has a conservation-related component and addressing resource concerns. Can't help get your tractor bedazzled, things like that. So I'm trying to think of kind of odd, there's just anything that you could think of that will actually have that first conservation benefit, and then it could also benefit your business. The rates for that, they're not on this sheet. The rate is 4% right now, which is pretty low. I think the prime rate is 6.75. And then there is a 1% administrative fee that when you make a loan draw, that gets added to your loan amount. So pretty straightforward as far as that goes. And the rates, the terms are 7 to 10 years, depending on the type of collateral 7 to 15 years, depending on the type of collateral that you use for the loan. Let's see, anything else about that? There's really no limit to the ARDL amount that you could borrow right now. As far as the limits would be based on how much is left in the fund for the loans. So as long as the project makes sense and you can qualify for that payment, then we can look at that. And then the other loan that we're looking at potentially being able to make available is called the Emergency Disaster Relief Loan. And that loan is based on if there is a disaster declaration made. And that could be from the president, the governor, a county level disaster declaration. So right now, we're obviously looking at drought, and that may be something that we, if it has not already been, may come soon for counties and possibly the state. And so once that declaration happens, then the Utah Conservation Commission can choose to make that decision to make those funds available for emergency disaster relief loans. Those loans, I should mention the ARDA loan, the one we talked about first, that one is year-round. We take applications constantly year-round. There's not a deadline. There is a deadline for the emergency disaster. It would be 6 months from the time the disaster is declared. It would have to get through the first approval at your conservation district and then make its way to us. So that would be the deadline for it to get through that first approval process is 6 months. The limit is $100,000 per entity or per individual that you could borrow. And it has to be for disaster-related expenses that you couldn't do through the regular ARDA program. So it could be purchasing extra feed, transporting your livestock, hauling water, dealing with mortality issues where an indemnity payment didn't cover that for you. So things like that. For all of the loan draws, you do need invoices. It could be invoices that you've already paid us out, and then we would just need to have your proof that you've paid that, like your front and back of your canceled check. But if you haven't paid it, we can also pay the vendor as well. We'd pay it to you, and you can sign it over to the vendor. Or the contractor. So as far as that goes, it's the rates. Okay, 7-year terms for the emergency loans. 7-year term, the first 2 years is 0% interest. And then the last 5 years is 2.75%. And then the UCC has waived the 1% administrative fee on that. And on all the loans, you can select your payment frequency based on your operation, what works best for you. So you can choose to have that monthly, quarterly, semi-annually, or annually, and you can generally select out to a year what month you want that to be due as well, so that it works for you. I think that's about all I wanted to mention. Any questions anybody might have about any of the loans? Yes.
Is that 1% administrative fee, is that one time? Or is that every year?
It is one time. So if you borrowed, let's just say you borrowed $50,000, so it would be a $500 total that you would. If you borrowed out that whole $50,000, it would be $500. Your loan would actually be $50,500. Yeah, great question. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you so much.
Thanks, sir. Okay, now we can go to our grasshopper and cricket program. And then water rights. And is there anyone from Water Resources here that wants to talk?
We don't say anything.
You know what you say? You can. Okay. Then we'll go to the Division of Wildlife Resources.
Hi everyone, my name is Aaron Eager. I'm with Department of Ag. I'm with Plant Industry. I wanted to talk about Rangeland Fest, the programs that we have, cricket, grasshopper. As we've been traveling through the state, talking with producers, pretty much you're hearing that the grasshoppers have hatched. We're seeing populations almost, about half of the counties. We've had Liz, some of you have met with Liz already. She's been out in this area, and we knew that the crickets had already hatched, but we hadn't seen any grasshoppers. So most likely the grasshopper hatch has come out, so we ask that you'll start watching for that. The program that we have is we have bait. So the bait's used for borders and boundaries. We've moved the bait from a central location in Ogden. We're putting it at the counties across the state to try to get it closer so that we can respond faster. If you want to get bait, there's no cost for the bait. The other program, or part of that same program, is we pay a cost share if you need an application. So how you do that is if you start to see that you have crickets or grasshoppers, give us a call, give me a call. There's a map in the back that has our inspector's name, but really any UDAF person here, you give them a call, they'll get it right to me. We'll come out real quick and make that assessment. If you meet that economic threshold, which is 8 to 10 per square yard, then you qualify for that program and you can get that assistance. and then we'll look at what you have, what kind of program you want to put together. The one thing I do want to mention is our cost share. If any of you have done that in the past, it was a pretty big document. We've worked really hard this year to reduce that, hopefully down to a one-page. The idea is not to make it hard on our producers. We can quickly get a program together. And then the other thing that we're changing this year is we have worked with a lot of drone companies. We figure a drone can respond quicker than a helicopter, plus a drone can do smaller acres. So the idea is we want to hear from you. When you see them, contact us. We'll get there. We'll try to help. We'll help walk you through that one-page document, and then let's get the treatment on the ground as fast as possible. So that's the program. Any questions?
Aaron, can you go on private or public lands?
Private, not public.
Okay.
But we can do a border on private.
Off of
Yeah, between them, and that would be a good idea. So, any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thanks, sir. My name is Jesse, and I work with the Division of Water Rights. Our office is up here in the north region, is in North Locust. There's 4 of us there, and any one of us can help you with any of the stuff you might need to take care of. Obviously, the drought's going to cause some serious issues. The state of Utah is water in the state, I guess, is divvied out first in time, first in right. So we anticipate some problems in the way water is handled, irrigation water especially. We expect some cuts to people, and unfortunately, it's not pretty when that does happen. I think if you have questions or anything along those lines, the sooner you get in and talk to us about the water the rights that you might have, the more clarity we can give you and help you as this moves forward. The cuts are done based on priority. It is very transparent. It's mostly done. It's been decreed by courts, and we are stuck with what we do. So anticipate some of that happening with some of the irrigation companies. Here in this valley, that probably won't happen. There's a full allotment for the irrigation out of the Bear River. The Lower Bear has a full allotment. Some of the other companies some of them are already on priority, and so that anticipation is that more of that will happen. But again, it's not just willy-nilly. We don't say you can. You know, we don't play favorites. It's all based on priority. As Taylor mentioned, there is a possibility for you to drill new wells, but it has to be done based on an existing right. There are no new applications for just stock. Unfortunately, there's a little bit of water that we can make an application on, but that's just a small domestic and no more than 10 head of livestock. So that doesn't help most of the livestock producers out there. But if you have a right, you can make an application to drill a well if you're having issues with a spring or a stream or something. Now, that being said, there are some issues with some of that stuff. So if you anticipate having problems like that in the future or this year, the earlier you come in and talk to us, the easier it might be for you to get some relief through replacement wells and renovating a well is a pretty easy and straightforward process. Generally, if you come into the office, you walk out with the start card that same day on something like that. So that part of it's not that difficult, but a new one won't happen. But a change application to change the nature of the point of diversion or place of use would take a little bit of time. There's some steps that have to be gone through, and so it's a time-consuming process. So, again, the sooner you get in there, the better off you're going to be. Now, one thing you need to remember about that is only the person of record can make any kind of changes. So make sure that the water rights that you have are in, that the title is updated and in the proper name, because if it's not,
that could cause you some issues down the road. So again, we're there to help. We can answer questions. That's done. The title changes are done through our Salt Lake office. They're kind of backed up. So if you're anticipating any kind of problems along those lines, get with us and let us help you do that. The wells, the drought tends to have cause some stress on those wells, and so again, if you anticipate any problems, get in front of it. Don't wait till you're having problems. And if you're having problems, get with the office and we'll see what we can do to help. We've had some issues in part of our area for the past couple of years as far as water delivery, and so that will happen more this year than it has in the past. But we will work with you. We will try and do whatever we can to help you, and that's what we're there for. So if you have any questions, please get in touch with us. That's the first and best thing that you can do. So, any questions?
Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Blair Stringer. I'm with the Utah Division of Environmental Resources. I just want to touch on a couple of things that we've been doing, just to not necessarily programs that are directly going to benefit producers, but a lot of things we're doing in a roundabout way will, as well as some other things that we do directly benefit all of you. First thing I want to talk about is grazing. So we've got properties around the state that we provide, basically provide the habitat, but we also allow grazing on those. We do those generally through contracts and bids, but there are some that come available from time to time. So if you are looking for a spot to graze, reach out to us. We can get you more information about when and where those are available. Also want to talk about permits. So we've been pretty aggressive with big game permits over the years, especially on years like this when we're anticipating large numbers of competition between forage and between livestock and wildlife. So we are currently in the process right now of allocating big game permits for this coming fall. We will be able to reevaluate that probably at the end of the summer. So depending on how the summer goes, if it's hot and dry, we may increase permits for elk and pronghorn and things like that, just to accommodate more harvest and reduce competition out there. The other thing I want to talk about is our WRI project. This is Watershed Restoration Initiative. We work with dozens of partners on this, providing a lot of habitat projects out there that are essentially to benefit wildlife, but there are a lot of benefits for livestock as well. A lot of these go on our public lands. We work quite closely with Forest Service and BLM. So we're doing a lot of these things like removing pinyon juniper woodlands, trying to convert landscapes back to shrub steppe, putting a lot of grass out there. So ideally these are going to be benefiting you in the future as well as a lot of projects that will currently. The last thing I want to talk about is, given this is a really dry year, we are anticipating a lot of depredation issues. So if you start having a lot of deer, elk on in your fields, hit us up early. It allows us to send a team out. We can put together a mitigation plan and start trying to figure out ways that we can try to offset that damage. We have payments we can do. We have removals, hazing, or even giving you permits and letting you do it yourself. So reach out if you start seeing those issues. We anticipate those are going to increase, especially if it continues to be dry. Those animals are going to really like your alfalfa fields and everything else. So reach out and we can try to help. So those are some of the things we're doing. Any specific questions about any of that? If not, there's a couple of us back here, so come after the meeting and have a chat.
Thanks, Glenn. Appreciate it. Now we'll go to our ag water optimization, and then I believe Jeff Camp wanted to say a few words. We'll give him some time after Jim goes.
Hey, I'm Jim Bolton. I'm the director of the Conservation Division at the Utah Department of Agriculture and Food. And we've got a couple programs that they're focused more on drought resiliency, I guess, and they are assisting with the current drought that we've got going on right now. But the Ag Water Optimization Program, hopefully you've heard about that. It's been around since 2019. We funded close to 900 projects across the state, but only 372 have been completed. But we're seeing phenomenal water savings in the projects that have been completed. And so it's allowing producers to do more with less water. And I think that it's going to be very valuable as we move into this season as far as what we can do with the drought resiliency. So the water optimization program is focused on helping producers become more efficient with their water. So what it is it's a cost share program. So if a producer wants to install a more efficient irrigation system on their property, it's a 50-50 cost share. We can fund up to $500 on the project. The remaining 50% can be in-kind match. So if you get funded through our program, but also get an equip contract with the NRCS, that can cover the other 50%. The only requirement is that the producer cover 10% of their own pocket. And so that's a really good program. I hope that a lot of you take advantage of it. If you're an irrigation company and you want to be more efficient with your irrigation system, we've had a lot of people that have gone from earthen ditches to pipe ditches or line ditches. We can fund up to $1 million on the irrigation company contracts. Right now, we've closed up our application period in March, and we're not going to open it up again until this coming February. But we've been funding in the ballpark of about $40 million per application period. Now that's going to fluctuate. Could be more, could be less, depending on what the Water Optimization Committee decides. But we've got enough for 3 to 4 more rounds of funding. So if you are wanting to do a water optimization project, you've been dragging your feet, I'd probably come in the door sooner rather than later to get the projects done. Another program that I wanted to mention is our Ag VIP program. So this year you might be struggling a little bit with your yields and what you're getting out of your crop. It might be good you to do the Agricultural Voluntary Incentive Program. And the purpose of this program is to use some newer, innovative practices on your operation. So if you've always kind of thought about doing no-till farming, or if you wanted to do cover crops, or if you wanted to do interseeding, or if you wanted to do residue management, some of these practices, you can earn, it's an incentive program that pays up to $20 an acre. So if you enroll in the program, you meet with some of our staff members, they'll talk about some of the potential practices that you're already using that would qualify for the incentive payments, or some of the practices that you could try to get an additional incentive payment. And so if you're interested in that and you want to do that, the one thing that we see when you try some of these new practices that build up the organic matter is what rain you do get, it infiltrates a little bit better into the soil, and it holds a little bit better in the soil as well. And then the other thing that we're seeing is some of the things like no-till, reducing the passes. You're seeing a reduction in the amount of diesel fuel that you utilize, amount of fertilizer that's required on the field. And so you can reduce a lot of your input costs there as well. And so the application period for that is going to be May 1st through June 19th. And if you're interested in any of those programs, I'll be around tonight to answer any questions. Anybody have questions now that I can answer? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm not going to go to the front if that's okay. I'm Jeff Kent, and I am not doing anything about drought related. However, I am talking to the people that can help the county with food insecurity. Last year, Farm Bureau and the 100th anniversary committee for the Box Elder County Fair and Rodeo kicked off a project last year to feed 100 families through the food pantries through the miracle of agriculture. Last year there were 660 families, not people, but families. So if you figure that out, that's 2,500 to 3,000 people in this county that is in need of food every month from the food pantries. And so we kicked that off last year, hoping to get enough for 100. We ended up at the end of the year that we could provide 16,000 pounds of protein to the 2 food pantries, Brigham and Tremonton. And we were able to feed all 660 families. So this year we wanted to try that again because each of the food pantries have went up about 15%. So now instead of 660, there's 760 plus families. Again, that's a huge amount. And so we've kicked that off. We're trying to solicit money to buy the animals and pay for the cutting and wrapping. And we're going through the miracle of agriculture, and Farm Bureau state people are helping us. Takia White and Clayton Beckstead are some of the key people in Farm Bureau that are helping us. But if you're interested, we try to recognize the donors. put a banner up last year on the Farm Bureau Cook Shack during the fair to recognize those people that donated. We're planning on doing that again this year. So if you're willing to help or know of anybody that would be willing to help, we would appreciate the support. And I'd be glad to answer any questions if you have any.
Any questions for Jeff?
Thank you.
I just want to thank you and all of our partners that have come up and taken the time to have people here to speak. Did I miss anybody? Is there anybody that came that's got a burning desire to stand up here in front of God and talk tonight? If so, now's your chance. If not, we're going to kind of shift gears. We've got some USU professionals here, and they've got some tools that we can look at. They're going to go through those now. I'll turn the time over to Dr. Thacker first, and he'll introduce himself.
I am Ben Law. I'm the resource coordinator here for Zone 1. And so I kind of help out the conservation districts, get things lined up. I'd like to just kind of, I guess, remind or invite throughout the year, the conservation districts have Grow Your District. We put on soil health conferences and then conservation fairs throughout the year. So just kind of a invite to come and check out what your conservation districts can do for you and different things that they can come out with. We've got a lot of great members on the boards, and most of them are here tonight. And so from a resource coordinator, I'd like to say thanks to the board on that for participating. So thank you all for coming as well.
Yes, the first thing home was don't trust anybody over 45 to connect your presentation up. Okay, so I'm going to try to get through this relatively quick. Probably not say a bunch you don't know, but just try to give you some information to think about where we're at and specific to your range and what how we might think about it. So it's been interesting. This data is based on snowtail, so I'm sorry, West Box Elder. But this is soil moisture. We know the snowpack's been really low. But I started looking at soil moisture back in January and found that this particular soil moisture was relatively high. A lot of that has to do with the fact that we have a lot of our precipitation has rained through the winter time, which is good for soil, but it's not good for your tanks and your springs. But the other concerning part is our soil moisture, our soil temperatures are also, this is departure from normal, so we're, 100% plus above normal across most of the state, which means that moisture that's in your soil is going to go much quicker than you'd anticipate. One of the new tools that's part of the RAP tool looks at where your forage production's at. So again, this is based off departure from long-term average. And so you can see that dark blue, that's close to 100%. So before you get too excited and tell the BLM you should be able to go full bore, a lot of this is due to the fact that we started growing vegetation much earlier than we normally would. On a lot of the range this time of year, we wouldn't have that much growth, but because we were warm and because we had a lot of that precipitation early, it's increased the amount of forage available now, but that's not going to persist. So just visually, this is what we kind of normally expect. That's mostly full in April. Then as we progress through April, May, June, which is when we get most of our growth, that declines. And when you got here in June, that's usually what triggers your grass is going to seed between temperature and lack of that moisture availability. But my concern is here we are in April and we're probably already drawn down in that soil bank in terms of the moisture that's available. So when we get to May, which is probably where the most significant portion of our growth occurs, in northern Utah, we're already going to be a bit behind. Another way to think about this, we just started drinking that water much earlier than we normally would have. If you're able to keep snow on top of that soil well into March, that soil moisture doesn't change a lot. So, two things to look at. I just used first looking at where we're at this year versus, these are forage production curves from the RAP tool. I put 2023 up there so you can remember what good years look like. But I want you to look at this black line is 2026.
And I want you to look at where the growth started in 2026 versus 2023. So I think this illustrates the point I was trying to make earlier. So yeah, we're growing grass, but part of it's we're growing grass much earlier than we'd expect to grow grass. We probably just extended our growing season significantly, right? If we had moisture to go with it, that would be great. But the concern is generally in northern Utah by June, we run real short on rainstorms. Mostly in May is where we kind of get the tail end of most of our rain. I try to look at past years to find a year that would be comparable to this year. 2012 was one of the closer ones I found. The reason I want to find something comparable is to give you some. I'm not an economist, so I can't forecast into the future very well, but I just want to give you some idea of what your forage production across the year may look like. So if this is close or similar to 2012, we end up right around 75% of our long-term average forage production. So that means you're short about 25% of your forage. I wish I could do something about that, but there's not much. Again, I don't know that I'd run out and make all of your hard decisions with your livestock and your range based on that projection, but just keep that in the back of your mind of the realm of possibility of what we may end up like. So, shifting gears a little bit, talking about grazing during drought. Again, most of you are well aware of this. It really boils down to managing the residual more than anything else. Not so much for the individual grass plant. The most common question I get asked during drought years is once the grass goes dormant, which it may go dormant in May this year, right? Can I go in and take that last, 3, 4, 5 inches of stubble off? You can, and you may feel like you're in a situation that that's your best option. I'm just going to give you some other things to think about why it's important I really think managing for that residual is probably one of the most important things we do most often. Managing residual and then also the rest that creates the residual oftentimes becomes key. You've seen me use this graph 100 times, basically just showing utilization levels, how that can impact your roots. Advocating for leaving grass, basically just leaving enough leaf above ground that you're able to maintain the roots below ground. That doesn't mean it's all in the same point in time. It's across years, and just making sure you allow the plant a chance to recover from those bouts of grazing and restore root function. So a lot of this comes down to, here are the agencies, you develop out for conditions, standards in your permits, whether it's 4 inches of stubble height or 50%. That's about where that balance occurs, where you're maintaining enough leaf material to maintain the roots. And again, that's across the entire year. So if you go in early and graze, but you get off when you still have soil moisture and the plant's able to recover, again, it's just coming back to 50% of the total production off that plant in a year. So why these decisions matter? To me, there's kind of 2 reasons that matter. First, just in terms of overall benefit to your livestock. I got thinking about this, and I still got the numbers backwards after 4 times, Troy, so I don't know what that means. So what I'm trying to point out here is when we're looking at the dormant, it's a crested wheatgrass plant. When you're looking at a dormant plant, it's gone dormant. Leaf material is around 4 to 6% crude protein. We know we need around 6% to maintain rumen activity and physiological condition of the cow. If she's lactating, it's higher than that, but it's at 6%. So if we're eating those dormant leaves, we're at least close to that 6%. So if you need to supplement, you're not having to bring a lot of protein to the table, so to speak. But once you get below that 4-inch mark or that 50% utilization mark, we're often left with mostly stem. So now the overall quality that your cattle are consuming is at 2 to 3%, which now will require you to bring some protein to the table to make sure they're meeting nutrient requirements. So the point I'm trying to make here is sometimes that last 2, 3, 4 inches of grass may not be worth what we often think in terms of benefit to the cow. So just kind of a flow chart to think through the trade-offs, not only for the range, but then for the animal. So on the range side, where that residual cover really becomes important, is it for the individual grass. Once the grass goes dormant, it doesn't care what happens to that above ground plant material, but the soil does. So as we decrease that residual cover, we decrease ground cover, we increase soil temperatures, that increases evapotranspiration, that increases runoff. More importantly, it decreases infiltration. So when we do finally get rain, if we've removed a lot of that above ground biomass, when it's dormant, we're not going to set the situation where we get less of that rainfall that falls on the soil into the soil, or it moves across the top, which then just leads to a slower recovery from drought. On the flip side, if we leave some adequate residual cover, which is not only just the standing cover, but it's also the litter that's on top of the ground, it's pretty easy to tell where you're at utilization-wise. If your litter's gone, you're well beyond 50%, generally speaking. But again, it just maintains soil cover, ground cover, reduces evapotranspiration, reduces temperatures, and helps with infiltration. On the livestock side, I actually think if we mostly just focused on this, we wouldn't have to talk about the other one. We just take care of the cows in general. So if this is assuming we've decided to remain with a heavy stocking rate, move beyond, so we're eating into that residual cover, reduces our overall forage availability and our forage quality. We've talked about that. But now we're potentially putting a cow into a nutrient deficit, which then the first thing that goes is body condition. With body condition, you lose reproduction. So now you're talking about turning a short-term problem, 1-year drought, into a long-term problem. If your cow doesn't rebreed, now you have a choice to make whether you keep her in the herd, plus you've lost the revenue for the year, and sometimes it'll take you a couple of years to catch back up. And then even just missing a breed cycle, so if your cow breeds 30 days or 60 days later than we normally would, a poor body condition score, especially given the price of calves. That's the one bright spot right now is calves are up. So you have options, and Andrew will talk about that more later. But again, then you're just reducing the amount of beef per acre that you're producing, which is kind of the metric we often look at in terms of overall profitability. On the flip side, if we just focus on taking care of our animals, then we'll avoid a lot of those things on the other side. So we've already mentioned resilience. Taylor and Clint kind of covered this other stuff pretty well. What I just always, being a range guy, I'm always going to point out that your range is never the same. It changes constantly. And so this is not an uncommon situation that I see across the state. A lot of you are well aware of this and you've been dealing with it already. But if you're not actively managing to maintain that grass and fork component in your range lines, you're losing it. Whether you're grazing it or not, the shrubs and trees will eventually win that competitive battle every time. So this is from an allotment down south, but it just makes the point: as tree covers increase, you started losing your grass and fork cover. So here's an example, or I'll just skip forward. Talk to GIF if you want to improve your range. I think juniper control is one of the best ways to get, it's pretty good bang for your buck in terms of increasing production. Here's an example from southern Utah. This is high elevation sagebrush. You can see that the grass covers remain stable, even though this part of Utah has had some really severe droughts. On almost all the other allotments or places I looked at, they had a decline in grass cover just simply due to drought. But I found this one really interesting. This is where we've done quite a bit of our work with sage grouse down south. But I found this flat line in terms of grass production for grass cover. And when you go back and look, you can see that reduction in shrub cover, which my argument is has helped us maintain grass cover through time. So essentially, by managing your range, you're able to retain or maintain that forage base better. Now, just a word of caution. We often look at where we don't have grass as where we want to do our treatments. In some cases, the reason we don't have grass is because we're looking at our low elevation pastures and they just don't produce a lot of grass. It's been my experience, if you move up into those moderate elevations, that's where you sometimes get the best return for your buck when you start looking at these types of treatments where you actually have precipitation to grow good grass. So north of 12 inches is a pretty good metric in terms of where these treatments seem to work the best. That doesn't mean you can't do some treatments lower than that, but your probability of success also declines once you drop below 10 inches of precip annually. Again, we haven't talked about virtual collars yet. That's blotted out really nicely, but A lot of these, as we've started collecting not only GPS data, but virtual fence data on a lot of animals, it's surprising how much of the allotment is often not being fully utilized. Again, this is a Clint Hill and a Taylor Payne situation. It's often driven by water availability. So you can increase your grazing without buying an additional acre by putting water in, which is a pretty efficient way to increase that forage. As you look at these different techniques to increase forage, you might consider, as you're looking at that, do I want to increase AUMs, which has a short-term benefit to it, or do I want to set some of that increase in forage aside so that years like this I have some additional forage that I can utilize on my range? This last one is improving riparian quality. I think we often think of this as a way to keep the feds off of our backs, especially in our Forest Service allotments and BLM allotments. But I think it's important to recognize that if those riparian areas are functioning properly, they produce way more grass and higher quality forage than the rest of our allotments. To me, and especially years like this where the amount of forage is limited, but the quality of forage is going to be really limited, it's a game of margins sometimes. So an extra 2 weeks of green forage can really be the difference between an extra 10 or 15 pounds on a calf. Again, given prices, that's nothing to sniff at. And then, again, this part of the state does a lot of different seedings and different things, but again, some stuff we've been working on over in Logan is looking at even some smaller patches of high quality forage to just extend that grain availability forage later into the season in some of those fall grazing situations. And with that, I've left Andrew plenty of time. Any questions? Okay, thanks.
So earlier in the week, David Seacrest and Ryan Marston gave this presentation. This is my first time giving it, but I did help with the decision tool that I'm going to show you and coming up with the ideas here. So I should be able to get through this. If you'll let me pause and think a couple times. So I'm Andrew Anderson. I'm a livestock economics extension specialist at USU, and I'm going to talk about the economics of drought management. So a lot of times when you hear economics, your mind goes straight to money, right? That's probably what everybody thinks. I think that's a big part of it, but the most important part of economics is making decisions. So usually we distill things into dollars and cents, and then we figure out how to make a decision on that. So it's really about the decision, not the money, when we're talking about economics. So we're going to talk about some decisions here. Okay, so you have drought, and you've got some decisions to make, depending on how things play out. So on the left-hand side, we have some indicators of how much impact you're going to face from a drought. So you've got the cumulative precipitation. You might have, which obviously would result in less forage production on range and pasture. You've got irrigation water cuts potentially, maybe permit reductions on your public land, and maybe some other things that feed into that that you can maybe predict in advance with reservoir levels, snowpack, etc. So that's what you're going to see, the kind of the causes, and then what you might have to do about that is kind of on the right-hand side. The first two are kind of the low-hanging fruit. If you need to reduce your cow herd, reduce costs, sell your open cows. Most of you probably do that anyway, but I think some people may retain some open cows within a drought. That the economics of that decision are even harder to justify. So that's where you should start. Start with your open cows. You've got dry cows. Maybe you have a calf that died. Those are the cows that we want to start with and move on from first. We might consider early weaning. And all these decisions come down to comparing the cost that you would face if you kept the animal, or if you weaned at a normal time, compared to the benefits of making a different decision. So always weighing costs and benefits. I'm not going to talk about early weaning. I'm going to talk about the last 2, 4, and 5. I don't know if people over here can see. Should we purchase feed or pasture, or should we sell cows if we face that decision? So that's what this presentation is going to be about. When we're weighing costs and benefits, we're always going to start by thinking about the variable costs of production. And that's because if we reduce our cow herd, our fixed costs don't actually change. So they're not relevant to this decision we're making. We're making cuts, especially when we're talking short-term cuts, like maybe we're gonna cut for a year or two, but we're going to replace them after that. So those fixed costs, they're part of your financial situation, but when we're making decisions, we're not going to use those. We're going to focus on variable costs. So what is a variable cost? It's costs that are directly associated with retaining an animal. So feed, labor, vet med, breeding costs, that could be a fixed cost, right? So if you just cut a couple of cows, you may keep the same number of bulls. But if you cut enough, then maybe you can reduce the number of bulls you have as well. And then additional costs that go with owning an animal. You might have to truck them to the allotment. You may have to haul water. So if you have them, those are the costs that you're going to face. If you sell them, then those costs on the margin go away. Okay, so there's a couple of things we need to think about, and we're going to talk later. So this equation we have about calculating the deficit here, the animal unit days deficit, is going to be important. So that's a piece of information that you're going to have to plug into our decision tool if you decide to use that. So let's think about what it is and how you get there. So first you need to calculate your normal demands or carrying capacity of your ranch. So you have calculate animal unit days. You need to calculate the grazing days and then multiply that by the number of cows. That gives you the animal unit days. Right now I have the decision tool set up in animal unit months, so you can calculate that by the grazing months times the number of cows. And if you have a drought-induced reduction in your carrying capacity, if that comes from a permit cut, from reductions of the forage on private lands, including perhaps your hay crop, and then so maybe losses, any kind of loss that reduces that. So you take the normal, you calculate the normal capacity, and then you calculate the drought capacity. So under the drought conditions, the number of grazing days you think that your cows can, or your range can support cows, and then take the difference, and you've got the deficit that you're facing. And that deficit is going to be important because it raises your variable costs. Okay, so we have a little scenario here. We're imagining somebody has 400 cows. They have them on a spring permit for 3 months. So 400 times the 90 days that they're out there gives you 36,000 animal unit days, or 1,200 animal unit months. And then in this hypothetical, we have a summer permit for 4 months, and so you multiply those 400 head by 120 days, you get 48,000 animal unit days under normal conditions, or 1,200 animal unit months. And then in the fall, we have them on pasture, and for 2 months, so 400 times 60, 24,000 animal unit days, or this is kind of small there, you can't really see it, but 800 animal unit months. And so altogether, total, normally we need 108,000 animal unit days, or 4,800 animal unit months to cover, and then we feed some hay during the winter. That's hypothetical. So, but what happens? We have a drought. This is probably a little extreme, but maybe it could happen. Probably could. Maybe the spring permit isn't impacted, but in the summer we have a 50% cut on that permit, and in the fall forage isn't there, and we have about a 50% cut in that. So you kind of have to make an educated projection on that, to be able to calculate the costs. And so what we have available is only 72,000, and that's down from 108,000. So the difference is our deficit, and we're going to have to make up that deficit if we choose to keep the animals by renting pasture or buying hay. And so that is that's where those extra costs are going to come. Okay, I kind of just went through that, but the shortfall, we have 24,000. Yeah, so this is just what I said. We've got a shortfall, and we're going to have to buy hay, rent pasture, or sell the cows. We've got to figure out what makes sense. So again, the three options are buy hay, lease grass, or sell the cows. So feeding hay, obviously that can get expensive in a drought because hay costs are likely to be much higher than normal in a drought. Same with leasing grass. And so we have to consider the amount of feed we need plus the premium price that we're going to have to pay for that. So when we think about the decision, this is where the economics come in. And so we have to kind of set it up in a framework. Hopefully you all think of cows as a capital asset. They're your breeding herd, they're an investment, right? So how do you think of a cow as a capital asset? So the way I think about it is the cow-calf operation, you have your capital assets, they convert inputs into outputs. The inputs are feed, water, genetics, healthcare, management, and they convert that into calves. So I think of it as the cows are like machines inside of a larger factory, which is your ranch. So typically to minimize your fixed costs, you want to be as close to capacity as you can, spread out your fixed costs across as many units as possible. And so we're thinking that you typically try to reach capacity in your factory. But sometimes when variable costs go up, like in a drought, we have to reduce temporarily the number of machines in the factory. So economics says that the value of a capital asset is the net present value of its future net returns. So you take all the projected net returns for the rest of this animal's productive life, and we discount it back to today. And so discounting just means that we reduce it a little bit for the opportunity cost of money, because you can take that money, you can put it somewhere else, in a bank account, a brokerage account, and earn an interest rate. But since you're not doing that, you're putting it in cows. So that's where the discounting comes in. But basically it's that stream of revenues, net returns going into the future. And so there's a couple of things that go into what determines the value of a cow. The biggest thing is how much remaining productive life does this animal have. So that's a big one. Because with every year, that value goes down because if she's produced another calf, the net return has already been realized, her value goes down. Then the second thing is how productive is she? What's the probability that she's going to get pregnant, that she's going to calve, that the calf will live? So if she's an unproductive cow, that drives that value down. So age and productivity are the two things that you want to think about in terms of value when you're calculating that. Also, I mentioned the future net returns. Also, you have to tack on the full value at the end of her life. And so obviously you're going to have some debt loss, so we have to adjust it a little bit for the chance that she might die. But at the end of her life, we've got a full value, and that's going to add on to that value and then be discounted towards the present. Okay, so how do we make a decision on whether to keep or cull or keep an animal? So got some basic equations up here. So the costs and benefits. Again, we're always weighing costs and benefits. The benefit of owning a cow is that value, so the net present value. So that's on the left-hand side here, the value of having a cow. The right-hand side, we have the opportunity cost. So what are we giving up in order to own the cow? Well, you're giving up the opportunity to take her to the sale barn and sell her the coal, or a bred cow, whatever the case may be. And then you're also, we applied this penalty, so I'm going to take a little bit to explain that. So on the right-hand side, we have the potential replacement cost times the replacement value. So what I'm thinking about here is after the drought, we might have everybody trying to purchase replacement animals. The price might be really high, perhaps even higher than the intrinsic value of the animal, the net present value of the animal. So if that's the case, but we still want to get up to our capacity, we might end up purchasing cows that we pay too much for. So we have to think about that when we're doing a culling. Is it going to be really expensive to replace the animals? If it is, then that's gonna enter into our decision. If it's not going to be over the cost, or the cost is not over the value, then that doesn't enter the decision. And I have this PV here for present value, because this could be a couple of years from now, so we have to bring everything to today's dollars. Okay, then at the bottom of the slide is the decision rule. So if the benefit is greater than the cost, then we're going to keep her. If the cost is greater than the benefit, then we will sell her. All right. So in a drought, you can think of a drought in two ways. You can think of it as reducing the value of the animal because we've got these added costs on this year, or we can think about it as adding to the cost on the other side. So either way, if it's subtracting from the left-hand side of the equation or adding to the right-hand side of the equation, the math still works. But it changes the decision there because we're either adding to the cost or subtracting from the value. So things are going to shift, and cows that we would normally keep, we may not choose to keep. The important thing about drought costs is there's two types of costs. There's costs that apply to the whole herd. So again, I said earlier that hay might be expensive in a drought. And so just normal hay costs are going to go up. So that's a drought cost that we're going to apply to every animal in the herd. But there's going to be costs associated with going over our carrying capacity for our storage space. So if you're going to choose to keep cows over the carrying capacity, you're going to have to provide either pasture or hay for them. And we apply those costs to the marginal cows. We don't apply them to everyone across the herd. So what I mean by the marginal cows is those are the cows that you're most likely to cull. They're the lowest value cows. So if we have a carrying capacity of 350, but we have 400 cows, and so we're going over our carrying capacity by 50 cows, we're going to take our 50 lowest value cows and we're going to kind of assign them the costs for going over the carrying capacity, include that in our decision rule, and then go from there. But we don't apply it to the whole herd because the whole herd isn't causing the overcapacity cost, just the cows on the margin that we get over the capacity. So this chart goes through what I just explained verbally. So this curve is the net present value. So what I've done here and why it's sloping downward is you should line your cows up from highest value to lowest value. And so the ones on the left, we're most likely to keep them because they're the highest value. The ones on the right, we're most likely to cull them because they're the lowest value. So we're going to cull any cows, it's going to be cows from the right. Then we take our normal opportunity cost, the cull value, and we find that they're equal right here. So to the right of that point, the value is lower than the opportunity cost, so we should cut off that tail and sell those cows under normal situations. The drought changes that. So drought causes these additional costs that kind of go all the way across. There's this lower level that applies to everyone, all the cows, because hay prices have gone up or other prices have gone up because of the drought. But then there's these, if you have this drought carrying capacity, we've got these extra costs that we're applying to the lower value animals. And so that changes our decision. We choose to we cut our herd from here We cut off all these lower value animals. And we're still feeding some, so we're still over, in this illustration, we're still over the carrying capacity, so we're still purchasing some pasture or hay, but we've culled some that we would normally have kept. Okay, so I said you should take your cows and line them up by highest to lowest value. Well, that's not really practical in a real world scenario because maybe you don't have data on every single cow. But you can make reasonable, educated guesses by cohort, so the age groups. So this is just a kind of a example here of you might have 3, 5, 7-year-olds, etc. And these are the most valuable, they have the most remaining productive life, and they're likely to be in a productive period of their life that goes down from there. And anyway, we would pull off the tail. I think that's pretty intuitive probably for most people. All right, so what to take home, some concepts. Cows are a capital asset, they're an investment, they're a machine in your factory. We need to think of them in terms of their value. The stream of net returns brought to today's dollars. Drought is an extra cost that we add on or something we subtract from their value, so those curves shift and it changes our decision potentially, may or may not. We can't do it by individual cow normally, so I would work by age group. And then you should run various price scenarios when you're doing this, because when you're calculating net return out in the future, future prices are quite uncertain, right? So you could do a low, medium, and high, and if you're trying to be careful about risk, you might pick the low end to make your decision off that. If you're a little more bullish, maybe you'll pick the high end.
Andrew, I don't know about you, but we've only got about 15 minutes or so to get in this room, and we've got to clean it out for another group.
Okay.
So I'm just to make you aware.
Pretty close. So we have a decision tool that we're working on. It'll be up on this website in the next 2 weeks. And I'm going to briefly, do I have 10 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll pull up what we have and kind of walk you through one scenario, and then we'll, if you would like a copy, you can email me, or you can wait until it gets put up on the website. So I'm going to switch to that now. Alright, so this is the Excel tool that I've got here. This is the inputs. So everything on this page is information you're going to put in, and then you're going to go to the summary to get information out. The information that you put in, it's color coded, so yellow is where I've made assumptions and you can change them if you want, so you should review them and change them. Orange is things that you really need to put in, like cow numbers, cow weights, and cost structure. And if you don't know exactly what these things are, cost, just give it your best guess. Like leaving in values that I've put in here is probably not going to get you super far because it's probably not reflective of what you have. So there's a table here where you have, you put in your head count, and then you have productivity assumptions with death loss, weaning weight, weaning rates, and you give it a range so that it can do some calculations with that range. And then you can put in the cows, your average cow weight, costs of production, and then you're going to have to put in, like I said earlier, you're going to have to put in your normal AUMs that you require for that you have normal carrying capacity, and then the drought reduced carrying capacity. And if you are going to choose to feed hay, then you can run scenarios by putting in either AUMs of hay that you plan to purchase, or you can put into rented pasture, and the prices are here as well. And there's a spot. We're going to have assumptions here. This is not exactly what it'll look like. 250 is obviously not the right price, and so we might put it like, and so you can put in different price scenarios. We'll have some price scenarios preloaded that you can use, but then you can adjust them. So this is kind of working off of the scenario I mentioned earlier. And then in this case, given those parameters, that same chart that I showed you with the cow's values and the costs, the drought costs, and the cost of the opportunity cost of keeping them will show up here. And where these lines cross is where you should begin to cull. So everything to the right of that line. And there's a table to help you with that as well. It has each of the cohorts ranked by their value, and then at the end it says what is the difference between benefit and cost of owning the animal. In this case, you would only end up pulling the very tail end 12-year-old cows. So, and then there's a little bit here based on the productivity ranges that you input. It tells you the proportion of animals in that cohort. So this says cull 100%, but if you put in different numbers, it might end up saying cull 50% or cull 30% of them. So that is the decision tool. It will be up, like I said, in the next 2 weeks, and you can access it that way, or you can give me an email and get a preliminary copy before then. So I'm going to go back to slides and put my email up there. So you have that. Also, David Seacrest is a great resource. He's the beef cattle extension specialist. So his email's there, david.seacrest, and mine is a.anderson. So I'll just leave that up, and that's what I have to say.
Thanks, Andrew. Any questions for Andrew?